we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortune, and our sacred honor. By the way, that's what is called the birth certificate of this nation. The Declaration of Independence is in our DNA. There was a young man, he was a doctor, who was from Pennsylvania. He was a good friend of Benjamin Franklin, and he was part of that group that wrote the Declaration of Independence. And he was known to be a smart man, and Benjamin Franklin had urged him to go and take part in these proceedings. He said, "We need you. We need you. We have a great task before us, and it has been assigned to us by Providence." That's what Ben Franklin told this young doctor named Benjamin Rush. I believe that's where we are today. We have a task before us. By the way, Benjamin Rush was once asked by somebody, said, "Are you a Democrat or are you an aristocrat?" And Dr. Rush looked at him and said, "I am neither. I am a Christocrat." And I believe he alone, who created and redeemed man, is qualified to govern him. I've always liked that. And then years later, as the War for Independence went on, and George Washington going through all the hardship and those terrible winters, that terrible winter at Valley Forge, praying in the snow at Valley Forge. But after we had won our freedom, and each one of these new states now was free to go its own way. We were not the United States in any sense of the word. We were very divided. And our forefathers knew that somehow you had to get us together, or somebody would come back over here like France or Spain and take us back over. And so they called a meeting to try to do something about it. Of the 13 states, only 5 states sent delegates to that meeting. They were suspicious of each other. Northern states didn't like the southern states and vice versa. The little states were afraid of the big states and all of that. They were hesitant to come. They didn't trust each other. They were divided. But finally, after they said that George Washington was going to preside over this meeting, they did come. They sent delegations because they were worried what might happen to them if they were not there, what might happen to their states. And they debated for days without accomplishing much of anything. I know another congressional delegation that's like that very much, not accomplishing anything. And one of those days when it was looking like they were just going to break up and go home without doing anything, the oldest delegate there, I mentioned him a while ago, Ben Franklin, he was 81 years old, and he didn't make many speeches. But when he spoke, he was kind of like E.F. Hutton. They listened to him. And he first reminded them of how God had been at work in this country from its beginnings. Some of the things that I've already said. And then he said this, "I have lived a long, long time. And the longer I live, the more convinced I am of this truth, that God governs the affairs of man. And if a sparrow cannot fall to the ground without his notice, how can a country endure without his aid?" The answer was clear, but nobody said a word. And then Ben Franklin continued. He said, "I want to make a motion. I make a motion that we take a day or two recess and that we pray for divine guidance as we draw up this United States Constitution that we're trying to put together." And they did. And after a few prayer meetings, they returned in a renewed atmosphere, and they finished that great work of the United States Constitution. That's our legacy, that Declaration of Independence that was written in that kind of atmosphere. And then our United States Constitution that was written in that kind of atmosphere. And today, we must somehow get back to that kind of feeling that our founding fathers used to ask God's blessings and to meet the dark challenges of our time. Yes, it's clear that God has been at work in this country from the beginning. God-fearing, God-worshiping men were leading it. Remember that passage in the Bible? Except the Lord built the house, they labor in vain that built it. God built this house. A few years after this, after the United States began to be doing pretty well and prospering, France sent a journalist over here. The country of France sent a journalist over here to see what was making this little country, this new country, do so well. And he came over here in about 1830. And he traveled around the country and he wrote an assessment of what he found. What made this country so great? No one had ever tried to put it down on paper before. He later turned it into a book called Democracy in America. But this is a paragraph from that book. He wrote, "I sought for the greatness and genius of America in her commodious harbors, her ample rivers, and it was not there. I sought it in her fertile fields and her boundless prairies, and it was not there. I sought it in her rich mines and her vast world commerce, and it was not there. I sought it in her democratic Congress and her matchless Constitution, and it was not there. Not," he continued, "not until I went into the churches of America and heard her pulpits aflame with righteousness did I then understand what makes America great." He continued, "America is great because America is good. And if America ever ceases to be great, it ever ceases to be good, if America ever ceases to be good, she will cease to be great.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
If America ceases to be good, she will cease to be great." That's a statement we ought to ponder, and we're going to with Jody and Aaron, speaking to you later. Because America can't be good and continue to kill 3,000 babies in this country. America can't be good when you have to fight to put the 10 Commandments in place. That's right. America can't be good if we treat the long period that we've had that a marriage is between a man and a woman. Mm-hmm. Yeah. America can't be good when our movies and our television and our video games and our songs, if you can call them that, condones what the Bible condemns. Think about those things as you hear these two great men talk to you later tonight. As we try to talk about how important it is that God be involved now. It makes me so mad and it makes me so ashamed when I see some of my political friends talk about that in order to keep some of these parties strong, that we've got to forget about the Christian values of this country. That's what we've got to be emphasizing, not letting up. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight, and I thank you for coming out. I thank my dear friend Jim for inviting me to come over the mountain to be with you. I wish Aaron and I wish Jody the very best as they speak to you. May God touch their lives and give them the words to tell you why there is hope for America and what we must do. God bless America. Amen.